From the start of Donald Trump's run for presidency, large numbers of evangelical Christians supported him. This was and still is his base. But why is this? It is because Donald Trump has promoted biblical values and principles more than any other president in the past few decades. America is a nation like no other. It was founded by Christian Puritans, the very cream of God's crop, who fled religious persecution in England and who came to America to found a nation which they built on the Bible and Christian principles, a nation who they said will be a light to the world. America, through God's blessing, grew in strength and power. The founders literally coined the phrase, "In God we trust." They trusted in the God of the Bible. They were worshippers and servants of the one true God. When George Washington was elected as the first president of the United States, the first act he did as president was go to church and pray for their nation and praise God. When American presidents are elected to office, they put their hand on the Bible and swear by the truth of that book to serve in honor and righteousness. Even though over the years the truth of that book has been trampled underfoot, the tradition is still left. America sent missionaries to the darkest corners of the world. The laws of that great nation were based upon the truths of the Bible. The family was built upon God's principles, and through this the nation prospered and became the world's greatest superpower in a very short period of time. Proverbs says, "The blessing of God is on the house of the righteous," and because America served God, God made America great. For the last few decades there has been a war which is increasing in intensity, waged by the powers of darkness against all that is good and of God in America. The people who hate the principles America was built upon, with great rage are fighting to create an America where God, His truth and the Bible is not welcome, where righteousness is scorned, and where sin, rebellion and depravity is praised as noble. The family unit of one man married to one woman for life has been broken in a large degree by the promotion of sex before marriage, homosexual unions, and the promotion of divorce. The babies and children of that nation who were so loved are now aborted and murdered in their mothers' wombs. About 60 million of them have been massacred over the years in America. This is more than the whole population of South Africa. The 10 Commandments, which were the foundation of God's covenant with man upon which America's laws were based and their families were built, have been trampled underfoot and rolled out the courthouses where they were engraved on the walls. Prayer has been thrown out of public schools. The Bible, from which children used to be taught and instructed, is now a forbidden book. The principles that made America great are under attack. The altars that families used to worship God on have been broken down, and instead the nation worships sports, sex, money, and movie stars. In this dark day and evil age, God raised up a most unlikely man to push back these things. He raised up Donald J. Trump. I'm a Christian, a firm, unwavering supporter of Donald Trump, and it is my opinion that everyone who believes the Bible, who has love for God or America, should support this man. Although many criticize Donald Trump for the deeds he has done in the past, let them remember Moses was a murderer. The beloved Apostle Paul tortured and murdered families. Abraham lived in a household of idolatry before God called them. Jacob, who was renamed Israel, was a fraudster. David's grandmother was Rahab the prostitute, but that was before they turned to God. And when God is your future, your past is your past. And I believe Donald Trump isn't the man he used to be. I believe he had a change of heart, and I believe every single Christian, every single righteous American, every person who values their country should support Donald J. Trump for the following reasons. Donald Trump values human life. Human life is valuable as man is made in the image of God. Abortion is the murder of unborn human beings. It is deeply evil and it is a horrible crime. God hates the hands that shed innocent blood, and how much more innocent can you get than a baby? And it's not just the doctors whose hands are stained with blood. It is everyone who votes for and legislates for abortion. They share the guilt of the deed. Those who vote for government officials who allow abortion are enablers and promoters of the murder of babies, and they will share in the same judgment before God as those doctors whose hands have murdered the babies. Donald Trump opposes the murder of the unborn babies of America and other nations. Planned Parenthood, which are the abortion mills of America, have been defunded by Donald Trump. Trump asked the Supreme Court to criminalize late-term abortion. His administration even went to the United Nations and told them to stop promoting abortion in other countries. Hear him.
There could be no greater contrast to the beautiful image of a mother holding her infant child than the chilling displays our nation saw in recent days. Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. These are living, feeling, beautiful babies who will never get the chance to share their love and their dreams with the world. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb. Let us work together to build a culture that cherishes innocent life.
Donald Trump made history by being the first president to attend the annual March for Life.
Unborn children have never had a stronger defender in the White House.
Abortionists claim that the baby's in the woman's body and she can do what she wants with her own body, including murder the baby that is in it. But that is perverted reasoning. If someone is in my house, am I allowed to murder them because they're in my house? No, they have a right to live, and even if they are in my house, I'm a murderer. And it's the same corrupt principle that abortionists push. Even if the baby's in the mother's stomach, that does not mean she's allowed to murder it if she doesn't want it, any more than I can murder you if you're in my house and I don't like you. Proverbs 31:8 says, "Open your mouth and speak for those who don't have a voice." Donald Trump defends the unborn and speaks for those who don't have a voice. May God bless him for this. Donald Trump is a supporter of Israel. God said in Genesis 12 to Abraham and Israel in Abraham, "Those who bless you, I will bless. Those who curse you, I will curse." The God of heaven said he will bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. Those words still stand. Israel has always been and will always be God's chosen and special people. What other nation was delivered like them out of slavery by the miracle working power of God? To Israel was committed the oracles of God. The Bible was written by the Jews. Psalm says we must pray for the peace of Israel. It is the only nation that the Bible commands us to pray for. In Matthew 25, Jesus speaks a parable where he rewards the nations who support Israel and he curses the nations who don't. Israel is a chosen nation, and all people who serve and believe in God's truth acknowledge this. Those who bless Israel, God will bless. The hatred and anti-Semitism towards Israel and the Jews is stirred up by Satan, that old enemy of Israel. Now Donald Trump is a firm supporter of Israel, and the church in America must support him because of it. Hear what he says about Israel.
I speak to you today as a lifelong supporter and true friend of Israel. I'm a newcomer to politics, but not to backing the Jewish state. I came here to speak to you about where I stand on the future of American relations with our strategic ally, our unbreakable friendship, and our cultural brother, the only democracy in the Middle East, the State of Israel. When I'm president, believe me, I will veto any attempt by the UN to impose its will on the Jewish state. It will be vetoed 100%. When I become president, the days of treating Israel like a second-class citizen will end on day one. Meanwhile, every single day, you have rampant incitement and children being taught to hate Israel and to hate the Jews. It has to stop. When you live in a society where the firefighters are the heroes, little kids want to be firefighters. When you live in a society where athletes and movie stars are the heroes, little kids want to be athletes and movie stars. In Palestinian society, the heroes are those who murder Jews. You cannot achieve peace if terrorists are treated as martyrs. Glorifying terrorists is a tremendous barrier to peace. There is no moral equivalency. Israel does not name public squares after terrorists. Israel does not pay its children to stab random Palestinians. But when the United States stands with Israel, the chances of peace really rise and rises exponentially. That's what will happen when Donald Trump is president of the United States. We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem. The Palestinians must come to the table knowing that the bond between the United States and Israel is absolutely, totally unbreakable. They must come to the table willing and able to stop the terror being committed on a daily basis against Israel. They must do that. And they must come to the table willing to accept that Israel is a Jewish state and it will forever exist as a Jewish state.
Donald Trump protects his country and the people in it. Every country has enemies, people who will take advantage of it and seek its destruction, and America is no exception. You have seen how President Trump courageously opposed China, who has been ripping off America and the people in it. You can see it in his opposition of the United Nations, who seeks to impose their corrupt will onto America. And you see him protecting America by keeping out illegal immigrants, many of whom are rapists, murderers, drug addicts, gangsters and criminals. Every country in the world which has let immigrants in is at a spike in crime, especially crimes against women. You can see this in Germany, France and Sweden, among others, which have let in immigrants. Sweden, which is used to be one of the safest nations in the world, has become a den of rape and violence against women. It was found that more than 90% of the rapes committed in Sweden were committed by immigrants. When this study was published, it was attacked for being racist. Donald Trump, out of love for the American people, seeks to keep them safe from invaders, and is doing so in spite of opposition from the enemies who sit in the government, the devil's cats. In the Bible, the Babylonians, the Philistines, the Syrians, the Amalekites were the enemies of Israel. They always were and they always will be. Savage nations will always be the enemy to the people of America. Donald Trump is viciously criticized for stopping immigration from certain countries and building the border wall to keep out immigrants coming from Mexico. But he is a king stopping a foreign invasion of his country. David, when he became king, built a strong wall around Jerusalem to keep out those he didn't want coming in and who meant harm for his people. Many years later, when the walls of Jerusalem were broken down, God raised up Nehemiah, and he went and he rebuilt the walls and he restored the gates of Jerusalem. The good kings in the Bible always strengthened the walls and the fences of Jerusalem. It is the wicked kings who never cared about their people, who let foreigners into their lands to rob and rape and pillage and steal. For those who say there should be no walls and no borders, why don't they start at home and tear down their boundary walls and leave their doors open so that the world can be free? Because they will be attacked and robbed in their homes. Those who say there should be no walls and no borders are promoters of anarchy and Satan's voices, who want a world where there's no safety, no security, no protection, where marauding bands can move freely. Heaven has great walls around it to keep out those who don't belong there. And there are many people who don't belong in that great nation, America. May God bless Donald Trump for protecting the people of America. Donald Trump promotes justice, law and order. Crazy as it sounds, in Europe depressed children can have assisted suicides against their parents' wishes. They can pay a doctor to murder them. Children can murder their unborn babies without their parents' consent, and the government will pay for it. So Europe approves of the killing of children and babies, but strangely, they will protect rapists, murderers, child molesters and terrorists, and will not give them the death penalty. This is satanic, murdering the innocent and protecting the guilty. God himself instituted and ordained the death penalty for certain crimes. In Genesis, the all-knowing one said, "Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood must be shed." All the heroes of the Bible, David, Solomon, Moses, Hezekiah, Elijah, Elisha, Noah, believed in the death penalty. It is an apostate people with numb hearts who don't practice the death penalty for rapists and murderers. There is no justice without the death penalty. And strange as it is, those who do not want the death penalty for rapists and murderers are usually those who condemn unborn babies in their mother's womb. The thief on the cross, while he was dying, as he repented and acknowledged Jesus Christ as Lord of life and death, said, "I receive the due reward of my deeds." A condemned criminal acknowledged his death sentence was just, and this is the belief of all those who trust the Bible. Paul, the apostle of grace, said when he was on trial in Acts, "If I've committed things deserving of death, I do not object to dying. It's righteous, put me to death." When blood is shed, that blood cries out to God for vengeance upon the land where the victim was murdered. Blood pollutes the land, and the only atonement that can be made in God's eyes is the blood of the criminal. That is the justice God demands. Wicked men protect criminals. They fight for the criminal's rights but tramp on the victim's rights. You don't see people campaigning for the rape victim's rights, but they campaign for the savage animal who raped the lady. Donald Trump is a supporter of the death penalty. May God bless him for that.
I've always supported the death penalty. I've always supported the death penalty. I don't even understand people that don't. We have to bring back the death penalty. They have to pay the ultimate price. Very much in favor of the death penalty, especially for terrorists and especially for people that, you know, killers that you see so many with the girls that are being killed and then they capture these guys. I am so for the death penalty. We will believe the right punishment, and we all do, for cop killers is called the death penalty. I'm also directing the Department of Justice to propose legislation ensuring that those who commit hate crimes and mass murders face the death penalty, and that this capital punishment be delivered quickly, decisively, and without years of needless delay. Death penalty all the way.
Donald Trump is a man raised up by God. The enemy is at the gates. The Democrats are inspired by Satan. Stand strong, Donald Trump. Trump 2020. I ask all Christians to vote for Donald Trump. Many find fault, but for those who ask them, if you don't support Trump, will you rather support those who promote anarchy, that are antichrist, that murder babies, that seek the destruction of America, that want to rob Americans of the values that they hold on to? Would you rather promote Satan's friends than someone that you have a personal disliking to? And it's a shame on America how their president has been scorned and despised and mocked, and it's a manifestation of the wicked character in those people's hearts. Even if you do not agree with that man is a leader appointed by the American people and by God. Support that man, and if you cannot support him, at least respect him. Hear these last voices of support.
You have to understand that he's also 71 years old, and I don't think he came to be president by mistake or by happenstance. I think somehow God put him in this position because he's not a politician. He seemed to do everything wrong as a politician. He offended many people, did the wrong things, but somehow he became president. And I just have to think that God, in some reason, put him there for a purpose. I don't know what that is, but we need to get behind him and support him.
I don't know if you know this, and I don't know if you don't believe me when I tell you this. But what's happening right now in America is witchcraft's trying to take this country over. It's witchcraft that's trying to take America back over. And I want to tell you something else. I am not being political, but I don't see how President Trump bears up under it. He's as strong as I have ever seen a man be. So I'm coming to you as a prophet, as a man of God, and I'm telling you, it's time to pray for the president.
Also, I began to see what a lot of Christians saw was that God was raising up this man who we didn't even necessarily like. And people have asked me why I wrote the book, and I tell them, you know, Hillary Clinton wrote a book called What Happened? And my book answers the question.
That's right.
And that is that God intervened because people were praying for some kind of shift in our country.
Right.
So God answered our prayers in a way we didn't expect with a man we didn't even necessarily like. Although when you get to know him or spending time around him, you find out that he's very different than he's portrayed in the media. He's kind and loving. Obviously something's happening in his life and has happened in the last 10 years.
You pointed out in this book about his relationship with his children. That says a lot about a human being, is what kind of kids does he raise?
Even Hillary Clinton complimented him in the debate, remember? And that does tell you a lot about a man. And he has very strong family values. He was raised in the church. He was raised a Presbyterian. Of course, he lived most of his life as a secular billionaire. But about 10 years ago, something happened in his life. He became much more serious. He kind of cleaned up his act. So the things that we don't like about Donald Trump, other than maybe the tweet he did yesterday, is from, you know, before that era. And back in that era, he called Paula White one day. You know, she's on TV, and she was like shocked. Why did he call? He said, "I've been watching you on TV." And apparently he watches Christian TV quite a bit. And he said, "Would you come to Trump Tower and talk to me?" And she did, and a friendship ensued. And then all these years later, when he was wanting to run in 2012, he called Paula and said, "You need to invite some of your friends who know how to pray." He said, "I'm not going to ask them for their support. I'm going to ask them to pray." And of course, he decided not to run. In 2016, he also surrounded himself with Christians fairly early. He seems to enjoy it. He seems to enjoy having people pray for him. And when I started seeing these pictures that were on YouTube of Christian leaders reaching out their hand and praying for him, I was just flabbergasted. I mean, what politician even lets you touch them, let alone pray for them? And you've been around presidents a lot more than I have, but the few times I've been around 4 presidents now, and never were prayers even prayed. Yet Donald Trump seems to enjoy this. And I believe that there is something going on in his heart. And I believe that God has raised him up.
You pointed out abortion, the most hideous type of abortion, and saying she wouldn't touch that. I said, man, that's an extremism we can't have. But I think Trump stood in the way of that. And his policies, we've never had a president like him in history.
In the debate, he said that it would be overturned during his administration. And he's already appointed a very good Supreme Court justice, and likely will appoint some more. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
Well, he has the possibility of putting in maybe 3 Supreme Court judges during his time in office, which would radically change the jurisprudence having to do with abortion and family values and homosexual marriage and all that. It's amazing.
Well, our country has been going toward the left and toward immorality for a long, long time, but there's been a crescendo lately. But God's people have prayed, and I believe that God has answered our prayers, and we have a reprieve. Donald Trump is not perfect. He can't solve everything, but at least we have a reprieve, and we can be encouraged that God hears our prayers.
Well,